Political gimmicks. Some fellow Liberals and the opposition say the Prime Minister must leave now.
I think he needs to go, yeah.
Now is the time for a carbon tax election.
Plus,
very tragic. It's unfortunate. Put a lot of the residents here on high alert.
search and rescue crews try to find a second victim believed to have been caught in a mudslide in Lions Bay. And
hey, it's Kev. I'll leave your information. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks.
way down, but not completely out. BC United leader Kevin Falcon is asking for donations to stop the former official opposition party from bankruptcy, while some former candidates wait to be paid too.
I am still owed money, yes, and I have a very, very little chance that I will receive it.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. It has been a stunning political day across this country. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance Chrystia Freeland has resigned from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's cabinet. That news comes on the day she was to deliver the government's fall economic statement. As the CBC's Rafi Bujikanian reports, it has fired up the opposition and rattled the governing Liberals.
From a minister's departure Justin Trudeau knew about,
I've advised the Prime Minister earlier this fall that I will not be seeking re-election as a Member of Parliament for Central Nova during the next campaign.
to another that landed as a bombshell. Chrystia Freeland, instead of delivering a fall economic statement, publishing this letter, where she wrote, "On Friday, you told me you no longer want me to serve as your finance minister and offered me another position in cabinet. The only viable path is for me to resign." Also saying she and Trudeau have been at odds about the best path forward for Canada, calling out costly political gimmicks the country can ill afford as it faces U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's tariff threat.
What the I mean, how does the Prime Minister, on the eve of a statement that we've been waiting for months, deep six his finance minister and think that things are going to be normal?
The reviews from some of Trudeau's own caucus no less scathing.
Let's put it this way. Firing a Minister of Finance who has served you extremely well is not what I would call a trustworthy move. And that's all.
Should he resign?
Yes.
I've been a great defender, but I just don't see how we move forward. I think he needs to go, yeah.
Calls echoed by the opposition.
Now is the time for a carbon tax election to turn the decision away from me or Mr. Trudeau.
I'm calling on Justin Trudeau to resign. He has to go.
While Trudeau hurriedly had veteran cabinet member Dominic LeBlanc sworn into finance,
do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear.
As other ministers had this to say about Monday's events.
The moment now is for us to focus on the best interest of Canadians. That's what we're doing.
Chrystia Freeland is a good friend, someone I work with very, very closely. As President of the Treasury Board and Minister of Transport, this news has hit me really hard.
At least 6 Liberal MPs have publicly called on Trudeau to resign today as he meets with his caucus to discuss next steps. Rafi Bujikani on CBC News, Ottawa.
Amid that resignation, a federal by-election is underway in Cloverdale, Langley City, as the Prime Minister deals with that fresh round of calls to step down. Former Liberal MP John Aldag had held the seat, but left federal politics to seek a provincial MLA post, which he did not win. Here's Mira Baines with more.
Voting is underway in the Cloverdale-Langley City riding, with the by-election results expected shortly after polls close at 8:30 tonight. That comes after a dramatic day in Ottawa with the resignation of the finance minister and Liberal caucus meeting. The seat was vacated when federal Liberal John Aldag resigned as MP to run for the BC NDP in the fall election. He lost, and now it's a formidable challenge for the party to retain the seat. Tamara Jansen is running for the federal Conservatives and hoping to retake the riding. She held the seat from 2019 to 2021. A local business owner, Madison Fleischer, is running for the Liberals. Fleischer has faced questions recently from a local Métis community organization about her claims to Indigenous heritage. Vanessa Sharma is running for the NDP and is a mental health and anti-racism activist. People we spoke to in the riding say they want change.
Inflation is just killing everyone. The rent is out of control and people can't afford to, the homes and the food.
I think we do need to move towards more equality.
The provincial election showed the area shifted right. This riding went to the BC Conservatives, who captured almost 34% of the votes. So far, the federal Liberals have faced humiliating by-election losses, including in previously safe Liberal seats in Montreal and Toronto. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
The news of Chrystia Freeland's resignation has sent shockwaves across the country, including here in BC. Our John Hernandez has more on what the turmoil could mean for this province.
Chrystia Freeland, a long-standing MP and finance minister of 5 years, abruptly resigned from Justin Trudeau's cabinet on Monday morning. The news has been met with shock and even disappointment by voters and leaders in BC, including Premier David Eby.
I always enjoyed my interactions with her. I found her hardworking and dedicated to her job. She was always interested in hearing about the specific concerns of British Columbia.
Speaking at a meeting of premiers in Ontario, David Eby wouldn't say whether he thinks the Prime Minister should step down. Instead, he turned his attention to the threat of tariffs by the U.S.
Despite what's happening in Ottawa, we're focused on ensuring that we're the stable presence that's going to help Canada through this moment. And everyone here is committed to that.
Tariffs were highlighted in Freeland's resignation letter, which suggested she and the Prime Minister were at odds on how to tackle the challenge. The proposed 25% tariffs would target Canadian goods headed for the U.S. Wood products, natural gas, and agriculture are among BC's biggest exports to the States.
Should President-elect Trump bring in the tariffs as he suggested, will cause wreak havoc in our economy. And so we need a provincial government that's strong, and we need a federal government that's got their act together.
West Vancouver Liberal MP Patrick Weiler repeated his call for the Prime Minister to step down. Meanwhile, some BC residents believe Freeland's resignation signals the need for change.
Well, I just think it brings up a feeling of hopelessness because there is no real change from the policies of this government.
Well, he's had enough time in government, and I think we need some new blood.
An unsteady start to the week for this country's leadership as it confronts some very tough economic challenges. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
At least 2 people have died in that severe windstorm that battered BC's south coast this weekend. Sea to Sky Mounties are asking for more resources, though, from the province as crews keep searching for a second person believed to have been caught in a mudslide that hit their home and closed the Sea to Sky Highway. Pinky Wong has more from Lions Bay.
Here in Lions Bay, the search for the second unaccounted person is still ongoing after one home was displaced by a landslide on Saturday. Brunswick Beach Road is the closest we can get as the affected area is closed off for safety reasons and crews are still clearing debris off the site. Sea to Sky RCMP says a local state of emergency has been put in place for the Lions Bay village, where around 1,400 people live. Crews earlier found one body of a resident from the home that was swept away.
Additional resources being requested to the province to come and do assessments for public safety reasons.
Dykstra says the landslide was around 100 meters wide and the house that was displaced was swept down from the top to the bottom of the hill. Nearby residents say they got power back Sunday night after it went out on Saturday.
Very tragic. It's unfortunate. Put a lot of the residents here on high alert, and especially this area which I live in where the landslide occurred directly in sight with and line with.
Several residents were evacuated as a precaution, but officials say a notice for 2 properties has now been rescinded. Environment Canada warned on Saturday that the Metro Vancouver area could be with gusts of up to 100 kilometers an hour. In Surrey, police say a woman has died after being struck by a falling tree branch.
Very, very sad. Yeah. She is very nice lady.
One neighbor says the gusts of wind were very loud and that branches were hitting the roof of her home.
Just the gusts of wind, oh my God, it's like never happened, so rare, right? And then I noticed that we don't have power.
A wind warning is still in effect along the north coast, where Environment Canada says gusts of up to 100 kilometers an hour are expected to hit in the Prince Rupert region. Pinky Wong, CBC News, Lions Bay.
Doris Madavi is here with our look at the weather, and that is a busy storm watch.
That's right. Weather statements in the interior, warning of frozen ground, possible snowfall, a winter storm warning in place for Highway 3, especially around Kootenay Pass, 30 to 40 centimeters of snow there. Snowfall warning for the Sea to Sky and Whistler, 10 to 20 centimeters of snow. Rainfall warning for the west coast of the island, up to 100 millimeters of rain. And here in Metro Vancouver, anywhere from 50 to 80 millimeters of rainfall, particularly high up on the North Shore as per usual. So lots of activity happening across the province. Also wind warning up on the North Coast, almost forgot that one. So let's take a look at what's happening right now. Still fairly calm, some showers, some flurries happening across parts of the South Coast. Presented to tomorrow, we see that big wave of precipitation arrive, heavy at times for sure. Some snow up at those higher elevations, but not for long. Freezing levels coming up as we get into midweek, but it's even very high accumulations possible in places like Victoria. That rain shadow effect not completely coming into play this time. So we see lots of rain here in the South Coast and then lots of snow in the interior, Dan.
Okay, Doris, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Not dead yet. When BC United, the former BC Liberal political powerhouse in this province, pulled the plug on their campaign in late summer, they didn't officially disband the party. Now, as Katie DeRosa explains, the former leader, Kevin Falcon, is quietly soliciting donations to prevent United from declaring bankruptcy and collapsing entirely.
Remember BC United? They used to be called the BC Liberals, a political dynasty that spent 16 years in power. The party changed its name to BC United under leader Kevin Falcon, partly to avoid confusion with the federal Liberals. Things went downhill from there. Donations were drying up, and BC United was being eclipsed by the upstart BC Conservatives. Ultimately, Falcon withdrew the party from the election campaign, opening the door for the BC Conservatives to become the official opposition. But the party is not dead. Some former BC United MLAs want to resurrect it under the former BC Liberal banner.
I've talked a lot about the need for a centre party in British Columbia, and that was taken away from us in the last election.
The problem? BC United, which owns the BC Liberal brand, is swimming in an ocean of debt. $1 million to be exact. That's according to notes obtained by CBC News from a December 7th meeting attended by Falcon and party brass. While he's laying low and not talking to media.
Hey, it's Kev. I'll leave your information. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks.
Falcon is staying on as leader and soliciting donations to prevent the party from declaring bankruptcy and folding entirely. That donation request isn't sitting well with former BC Liberal loyalists.
And unfortunately, that's what I've been hearing from people is, are you serious? But to go and ask for money right now at Christmas time, right after an election when there's really a lot of hard feelings, a lot of people are really sore over what Kevin Falcon did.
That includes former BC United candidates who say they're still out of pocket for money they spent on their campaigns.
I'm not really thrilled that this is happening. I am still owed money, yes, and I have a very, very little chance that I will receive it.
BC United staff has dwindled from 27 down to 5, and the party is trying to sublet its office space, which costs almost $20,000 a month. Falcon is not being paid by the party, according to BC United insiders. Clausen thinks Falcon should step aside and hand the reins to a new leader. One former BC United and BC Liberal spokesman hopes the party can clear its debt and rise from the ashes.
Center-right folks who maybe don't find a home within the BC Conservatives, center-left folks who maybe don't have a home within the BC NDP. A lot of them are feeling quite politically homeless right now.
Whether or not that home can be found under the banner of the BC Liberals remains the million-dollar question. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Victoria.
Still to come, we'll have the latest from Toronto, where all 13 of Canada's premiers have been meeting amid uncertainty in Ottawa. That's next.
I think it's important to give a human face to the stories that we hear every day, the people that they affect.
And I think talking to those people is what really gives us the true sense of the impact of the stories that we're hearing.
Canada's premiers have been meeting to develop responses to Donald Trump's trade tariff threat. But as Olivia Stefanovich explains, the sudden resignation of the federal finance minister adds a new element of uncertainty.
Seizing the moment to send a message to the U.S. and the federal government.
This is a time for the premiers to step up, which we're going to.
Provincial and territorial leaders gathering together for the first time in person amid political turbulence on both sides of the border.
And make no mistake about it, we may have our differences, but we're a united group of premiers.
When there's a threat of tariffs, we can't just sit back and roll over. We have to show that we have strength.
Northern premiers say they're on board to take aggressive countermeasures if the U.S. president-elect moves forward with plans to slap 25% tariffs on Canadian goods.
We need to do things like that to ensure that, we get the respect of Donald Trump. If we just roll over, how's he going to respect us?
The incoming Trump administration is threatening steep tariffs, unless Canada stops the flow of illegal migrants and hard drugs like fentanyl across the border.
We need to be making those decisions, those investments, and come together collectively as a country on issues without having somebody do it in another country through a tweet.
The Premier of the Yukon says it shouldn't have taken a social media post by Donald Trump for the federal government to address the fentanyl crisis.
We have to give a little pause in the fact that we really need to commit to this now because it's been affecting so many of us across this country for years.
Our priority must be to settle the problem on the border. We still have some people coming at the airport and then moving illegally to United States.
Addressing those concerns hit a major snag today when Chrystia Freeland suddenly resigned from cabinet, a decision she says she made after the Prime Minister told her she would be moving from finance.
I think she had a difficult choice to make, and she made it.
On a day like today, I would hope that Canadians are reassured by looking at this table and seeing that the premiers are unified.
Premiers say they'll continue building on the work they've started here when they travel to Washington, D.C. to meet with members of the U.S. Congress in the new year. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Mississauga, Ontario.
Now, the fall economic statement was eventually tabled by Government House Leader Karina Gould, as the CBC's Ashley Burke explains that part of the story.
A media lockup unlike any other. Journalists showed up to view embargoed copies of the government's fall economic statement just as the finance minister set to deliver it stepped down.
From Finance Minister, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, that she in fact is no longer going to be a finance minister and indeed is resigning from the cabinet.
Amid the bombshell news, the very document stayed shrouded under black sheets for almost 4 hours. It was unclear if it would be released at all until early afternoon. We finally got our hands on this document with about 2 hours rather than 6 to parse through nearly 300 pages of macroeconomic forecasts. And this document is one of the reasons for the split between Freeland and the Prime Minister. Freeland wrote, in the face of Donald Trump's tariff threats, it was important to keep Canada's fiscal powder dry and avoid costly political gimmicks. The budget includes $1.6 billion for a tax break on holiday essentials. In total, there's more than $24 billion in new spending over the next 6 years. And the government didn't stick to its own self-imposed target to keep the deficit down around $40 billion. It's close to $62 billion for the last fiscal year. This financial expert says it's due to one-time costs from COVID liabilities and Indigenous lawsuits.
We're still seeing a relatively high-spending government that is not necessarily keeping enough powder dry for what could happen between now and the next budget.
That uncertainty trumps administration. The government has a $1.3 billion plan to beef up security at Canada's border to respond. The economic projections include what might happen if Trump introduces some tariffs, but doesn't explore what a full-out trade war would look like. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Snow hitting the ground in Kelowna earlier in the day, and plenty of that stuff throughout the province. Darius has your BC-wide weather forecast coming up right after this. Back to our top story now, the monumental day that was in Canadian politics. Chrystia Freeland resigns as Minister of Finance and quits cabinet this morning, just hours before she was set to deliver the government's fall economic update. Dominic LeBlanc has now been sworn in as head of finance as the Liberals revealed a much larger deficit. Earlier in the day, we spoke with CBC's chief correspondent Adrian Arsenault here in Vancouver about what reporters are working on for the National.
So obviously, as you say, huge day, certainly unprecedented. And the challenge with covering tonight is we don't know what the what next is. It has been moving fast all day. So we're trying to cover this from a number of angles. One of them is a surprise element, just to give you a sense of how much of a surprise this was. The premiers were meeting today.
That's right.
And in the course of that meeting, Doug Ford got a note or a text letting him know that Chrystia Freeland had pulled out of cabinet. He shared that, and then within minutes had her on speakerphone. That's how they found out. This is important to them because what kind of front do they present? They're focused on Donald Trump's tariffs, so what do they do? So we're going to look at the surprise of this. We're going to look past the politics of this because this fall economic statement, what is the real story of Canada's economy right now? Peter Armstrong was in that lockup all day. He's going to try to put all the spin aside and just look at the numbers. And then comes the big question, which is tomorrow, the next day, what happens?
And we were waiting to see what those MPs would say coming out of caucus. Very few were saying much. You've put out the at-issue bat signal. They're going to be live tonight.
And they're like, yes, we hear you.
To the skies, yes.
So, not normally an at-issue night, but Althea Raj, Chantal Hébert, Andrew Coyne, and Rosie, who has been on the air for some 10 and a half hours now,
whole time,
are doing it live. And they're doing it live because, again, what's going to change? The core question is, was this a fatal blow to the Trudeau government? What happens next? Do they prorogue Parliament? As of Wednesday, they should be off for 6 weeks. Do they just gut it out? Interesting choice in Dominic LeBlanc. Remember, he's the guy who went down to Mar-a-Lago with Justin Trudeau. Correct. Sort of a sign of strength, kind of he's in there for the long term. This is our team. We'll see how that plays out.
Well, a large crowd of family, friends, and voters gathered yesterday to remember former Premier John Horgan. He died last month at the age of 65 after living with cancer for a third time. Katie DeRosa was there as family, friends, and fellow politicians said goodbye.
2,500 people gathered outside Victoria to say goodbye to John Horgan, former BC Premier, a mentor, and a father.
Take some strength holding my hand.
Tributes from his two sons, tinged with grief.
I'll see your hand make the salute to prosper and live long.
He was any number of things to any number of people. To Nate and I, he was never anything more than just Dad.
Family were joined by friends, former colleagues, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, all celebrating the life of BC's longest-serving NDP Premier.
That was John. Quick-witted, brilliant, but unflinching in his values and beliefs.
After stepping down as Premier, Horgan was tapped by Trudeau to be Canada's ambassador to Germany.
Man, he left politics more popular than when he entered.
In the crowd were not just political allies, but also former rivals.
Premier Dad, the People's Premier, and John from Langford became his monikers. He was one of the most popular premiers we've ever seen, respected and loved by people across the political spectrum.
Up on stage, symbols of Horgan's devotion to sports, science fiction, and his Irish heritage.
John would never pass up an opportunity to mention that he was Irish.
Horgan died at age 65, just over a month ago, following his third bout with cancer. His loss was sudden.
I had 34 happy years with my dad, but I thought I'd get 34 more.
Horgan's final message for BC, told to the crowd by his son.
And he said, just tell everyone I did my level best. I love my dad very much, and the world feels emptier without him in it.
Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Colwood, BC.
Mail is expected to be moving again tomorrow across this country. After a month-long strike, the Federal Industrial Labour Board has ordered Canada Post workers back on the job, a decision the union calls unconstitutional. Kayla Hounsell on what happens next.
What do we want? Contracts! And when do we want it? Now!
For a month now, they've been here on picket lines across the country. But this could be the last day of the holiday dispute between the Postal Union and Canada Post. 55,000 postal workers have been ordered back to work, an order the union believes is unlawful.
The Liberal government did this. They said they wouldn't do it. Now they've done it. It's unacceptable.
On Friday, the federal labor minister directed the Industrial Relations Board to order Canada Post employees back to work if a deal wasn't doable before the end of the year. The board has ordered operations to resume Tuesday morning.
It's highly integrated. We've got 21 processing plants, over 460 depots, thousands of post offices. So it's not like just plugging a refrigerator back in. You got to ramp things up.
Postal workers will have to work through a backlog of several million packages. But the owner of this airline in Yellowknife says at this point, getting anything moving will help.
It's really created a backlog throughout all the systems, because Canada Post is just one, finger of part of a hand of how much or how the freight comes up to the north. So by it not working, it makes everything a little bit more difficult.
Solidarity!
The order to return to work is a temporary timeout. The terms of the existing collective agreement will be extended to May 2025. The employer and the union have also agreed to implement a 5% retroactive wage increase. But it remains unclear what workers will actually do Tuesday morning.
We'll see if we go back to work or not. That's to be decided. We may not listen to this. We may defy this order.
The union says it plans to challenge the constitutionality of the return to work order, saying its fight for justice is far from over.
Solidarity!
Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Halifax.
Hospitals across Canada are reporting a spike in cases of a mild bacterial infection, commonly known as walking pneumonia. It mainly affects children and teens and can be commonly treated with antibiotics. So what can you do to protect your loved ones and keep an eye on things? Dr. Eric Swartz is head of pediatrics at Vancouver Coastal Health and a pediatrician at BC Children's Hospital as well as Richmond Hospital. Doctor, thanks for your time here. First of all, what exactly is walking pneumonia?
Walking pneumonia is a type of pneumonia, but it's very much almost indistinguishable from all the other respiratory tract infections that we're seeing. So fever, cough, malaise, fatigue, headache, those same symptoms that seem to be, happen with every virus, every pneumonia, we see with walking pneumonia as well.
And why do you think we're seeing a spike in cases across the country now?
And nobody really knows. There are episodic spikes every 4 or 5 years, so it's not uncommon. It could be related to the fact that people were indoors and isolating during COVID-19, the pandemic, and then the children weren't exposed to this bacteria like maybe they would have in the past.
And is there something about teens and kids of a certain age, why they get it more often than others?
No, everybody will get it. It's just that some people are more susceptible to have the severity of the disease. So children tend to be more susceptible or at least have a more severe disease, younger children especially. We used to see it much more in older children and teenagers, but for some reason this year it's happening more in the younger children as well.
Does the fact that COVID dominated, for example, respiratory seasons for the past number of years have anything to do with whether or not it's spiking or fading in your mind?
I don't think so, because we have seen it. I mean, every year there is some, it's called mycoplasma pneumonia. That's the bacteria that causes walking pneumonia. And we do see it every year. It's just for some reason that we're not quite sure of, there's a spike this year.
Okay. Are you able to quantify how many people in BC, kids or teens, may have it right now that you know of?
It's very difficult to say because most people who have walking pneumonia never get treated, never get tested, and recover in about a week. There's that small proportion that will need to be seen in the emergency room or admitted to hospital.
And when it comes to parents, guardians wondering, kid's got something, we're not sure what it is. I mean, tis the season for respiratory infections. What should they specifically watch out for when it comes to walking pneumonia?
The same thing as they should watch out for with any type of respiratory infection. So if your child is sick, has a fever for longer than 5 days, they should be seen by a healthcare professional. If they're not drinking well, then we need to support them and make sure they're hydrated. If they're having issues breathing, then of course they need to be seen quickly.
And we heard that it can be treated with antibiotics. Are they readily available when they go for treatment?
Yes, and we use some slightly different antibiotics for mycoplasma pneumonia, for walking pneumonia, compared to other types of pneumonia. So that's why people need to be on guard. Healthcare professionals need to be on guard and know that there's a spike and that maybe we might need to treat with a different kind of antibiotic.
All right. We appreciate your time, Dr. Eric Swartz at BC Children's Hospital. Thanks again for your expertise.
My pleasure.
Hundreds are feared dead and as many as 100,000 are homeless after a cyclone rips through the French archipelago of Mayotte. The race to help next. It is a trial that has triggered an outpouring of support for a rape victim in southern France. 71-year-old Gisèle Pellicot was cheered again when she attended the hearings as her husband and dozens of others took to the stand one last time. Sarah Levitt has details from outside the court and a warning: some of the details in this story are disturbing.
It's become a ritual. The dawn huddle outside of Avignon's courthouse for a much talked about trial. Inside, another ritual. Acclamation for Gisèle Pellicot, who has become an icon for opening her mass rape case to the public. She waived her right to anonymity, putting a face and name to a rape victim, a rare occurrence. The alleged assaults happened here in her nearby hometown of Mazan. Her husband is accused of drugging her, inviting dozens of men to this parking lot before sneaking them to his home to rape her. That went on for 10 years. He's pleaded guilty. 50 other men are also accused. A plumber, volunteer firefighter, and a retiree among them. On Monday, those men had the chance to address the court. On the streets of Avignon, it's hard to ignore what's been going on.
We want justice.
Gisèle's name, even image, is on display throughout the city.
Gisèle made us a huge gift. That's why we want to thank her. That's why we made that.
And with that, Gisèle Pellicot walks out of the courtroom for the last time before the verdicts come down. In the court, we heard from Dominique Pellicot with his last words. He started by highlighting the courage of his ex-wife and begging forgiveness from his family.
Prosecution has asked for the maximum sentence, 20 years for Dominique Pellicot, and between 4 to 18 years for the other men. The verdicts and sentencing come Friday at the latest. Within the clamor of the media, I ask Gisèle,
Est-ce que vous êtes soulagée?
Are you relieved?
Pas aujourd'hui, pas aujourd'hui.
Not today, she says. Not today. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Avignon, France.
France is using ships and military aircraft to rush rescue workers and supplies to Mayotte. As Crystal Gamansing reports, the tiny French territory in the Indian Ocean has suffered catastrophic damage after a deadly cyclone ripped across the islands on Saturday.
In Mayotte, hundreds or even thousands are feared dead. Cyclone Chido is described as the strongest to hit the French islands in 90 years. It brought winds of more than 220 kilometers per hour, churning up waves reaching 8 meters high. The main hospital sustained heavy damage, as did many government buildings. Even the airport control tower was hit. Additional French military members have been deployed. Teams have been working to clear away debris and search for survivors. Communications are limited with power and phone lines being down. The French Interior Minister now on the ground, offering support, but also urging calm.
Parce qu'il reste une montagne à déplacer. Donc chacun doit se mobiliser, chacun doit être à son poste, professionnel. Pas de panique, pas de précipitation, le sang-froid. Ce que vous avez appris, vous êtes des professionnels.
Mayotte is an impoverished nation located off of the east coast of Africa. There's an estimated 300,000 who live there. 100,000 are said to live in slums. Many of those communities were destroyed by the cyclone. Officials have expressed concern about access to food, clean drinking water, and sanitation, along with the possible spread of disease such as cholera. The French Red Cross is working to bring in supplies and distribute them, along with the French military. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.
2 people have been killed after a shooting at a private Christian school in Madison, Wisconsin.
Around 10:57 a.m., our officers were responding to a call of an active shooter at the Abundant Life Christian School here in Madison. When officers arrived, they found multiple victims suffering from gunshot wounds.
Police say the suspected shooter was also found dead at the scene. At least 6 other people were hurt, with children among those reported killed or wounded. Officials have only identified the shooter as a student at the school. The institution teaches about 400 students from kindergarten to grade 12. Darius Madavi is here with our BC-wide forecast and back with that warning map. And man, that is busy.
I know, starting with the same thing, Dan. So earlier I rushed over it a bit, but wind warning up on the north coast, ridge of high pressure built into the north, which is why they're a bit more calm than we are here in the south. That means all that air is trying to rush out to the ocean where there is some low pressure, trying to fill in that. Over here, widespread weather statements. Less widespread are some more major weather warnings, but still in some major places. Metro Vancouver, west coast of the island, and some of the major highways all under weather statements. So let's take a look at the winds that are expected, because again, this time around, winds are not the bigger concern as it was on the weekend. This time precipitation is more of a concern, but we will see some very strong winds on parts of the island, west coast of the island, around Victoria, and some isolated spots on the east coast as well as we get through the day tomorrow. This low pressure system not moving ashore, staying off the shore, but still spreading some very heavy precipitation at times and causing those temperatures to really jump up as we get into midweek. Now, here you can see that precipitation starting to come in, big wave, and as it breaks into the interior, lots of snow because temperatures are cool enough to see snow pretty much everywhere. We've seen that today as we got that snow in Kelowna and other areas in the southern interior. We're going to continue to see that into tomorrow, and then another wave of precipitation arrives on Thursday, which you can see right there. So Wednesday, a little bit more calm, but more precipitation coming on Thursday. Many more places will see rain as a result of that because we are seeing those freezing levels jump up. In terms of total precipitation, this isn't just rain, this is all precipitation, which is why we're seeing it climb in the interior too. Highest on parts of the south coast for sure, but also the central coast getting some rain at those higher elevations, or some precipitation at those higher elevations. Port Alberni, 62 millimeters is significant. Parts of the north shore of Metro Vancouver will likely also see accumulations that high, not being shown here. Wait, here we go. Let's zoom in again. There we go. West Vancouver, this is 44 millimeters. It could very well be higher than that in some areas, especially in places like North Van. Could see as much as 70 to 80 millimeters in some spots. And really, that's starting tomorrow afternoon and continuing through Wednesday morning. If we take a look at our snowfall map, a little bit more contained where we're seeing it, especially as we get into midweek again, because we're switching from rain to snow at those higher elevations. But many places in the interior, especially on those ranges, seeing very high accumulations. And like I said, less of that breaking into the north because we do have that ridge of high pressure up there, keeping that precipitation locked down here in the south, but very chilly up in the north as a result of that as well. And again, sea to sky under a snowfall warning. There we could see anywhere from 10 to 20 centimeters of snow. Same up at Whistler Village. Higher accumulations up in the Alpine there. Clearing up in the north tomorrow, as you can see here. Some more snow breaking in there probably on Wednesday. Here in the south, lots of activity happening and really picking up from west to east through the day tomorrow. Probably not hitting the southeast with that snow until tomorrow evening into the nighttime hours. And here we go, Dan. Here's a 5-day forecast. Showery tomorrow morning. Rain develops in the afternoon, continues into Wednesday morning, but then some sunshine.
Okay. Would you lead us in a deep breath, please, sir?
I would love to.
Okay. Very good. Darius is staying with us for some good news, actually hilarious news, all to do with some comedic timing in the nature photography game. What's up?
So this is the thing that made me feel most okay this weekend, so I thought I would share. It's the time of year when we get the Comedy Wildlife Photography Awards coming out, and here is the overall winner. Maybe I should say this one's for last, but oh well. This is Stuck Squirrel. Really lovely photo of
Is
a
he
red
actually
squirrel.
stuck, or they?
Not sure.
Okay.
Not sure, to be honest. This is a mantis. This one is the mantis flamenco is the name of that one. Here we have a frog in a balloon. The timing is just
suit.
so good. Whiskered turn, crash on landing. Ow.
She's looking at him like, Gary, I swear to God.
Come on.
Yeah.
Unexpected roll swap.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Holy moly.
Yeah. Here we have smooching owlets. This is their kid.
Really?
Doesn't seem very amused.
No, they're just done with their parents' stuff.
Awkward smiling frog. This
Yeah.
won the youth award. This one's my personal favorite. He's so cute. And then
I've woken up feeling like that. Yeah.
a story and 4 photos. They're so good.
Enough said. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
A bombshell on the Vancouver sports scene. The beloved Whitecaps are up for sale. The worries about what that might mean from fans. Next.
This is Vancouver is a new CBC podcast where we explore the issues, the stories, and the people that make this place home. Listen to This is Vancouver wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
CBC is a returning partner of the Push International Performing Arts Festival, January 23rd to February 9th. The festival features presentations of groundbreaking contemporary works of theater, dance, music, and multimedia. And ring in the new year with CBC. Watch a special live broadcast on New Year's Eve on CBC Gem, CBC TV, and the CBC News BC streaming channel. Coverage begins at 5 p.m.
The Vancouver Whitecaps are up for sale, and that has many soccer fans concerned about the future of the club.
And whether the sale could mean relocating the team. Michelle Gomez has more.
As the owners of Vancouver Soccer Club prepare to sell, fans have mixed feelings.
That's kind of our hope, like whoever comes in will put in the effort and the money to grow this team into a competitor.
For Peter Zimmerman, the Whitecaps are more than just a soccer team. It's his community. Zimmerman attends every Whitecaps home game he can and most away games too.
I just hope they are the best kind of them and they are thoughtful of what they are actually purchasing because it's not just a franchise in a league, it's really as a soccer community's team in a good city.
While he's hopeful new owners will put more resources into the team, he and other fans are worried new leadership could mean the team leaving the city.
It's basically the worst thing possibly could happen to the Vancouver soccer community.
While no promises have been made, the club's CEO says it's a priority for the owners to find a buyer who is committed to keeping the team in Vancouver.
We all want this club to do better every year. We all want to do the next step. We are ambitious, we put the bar high, and now we have another avenue, we have another potential to unlock where we can get additional new energy to do even better.
The team became part of Major League Soccer in 2011, 3 years after Steve Luxo, Jeff Mallett, and former NBA star Steve Nash joined Greg Kerfoot in owning the club. No asking price has been publicly released, but according to Forbes, the club was worth approximately $583 million last year.
Billionaires with that sort of willingness and passion and desire don't grow on trees. And nor does the money that comes from these Major League Soccer franchises.
MLS play-by-play commentator Blake Price says finding a buyer may not be easy, as the Whitecaps do not own a stadium or many assets.
But it will likely be a short list of suitors that will be interested in it, and I just hope that somebody local or that wants to keep it local will ultimately step up.
Fans remain determined to make sure the team stays local.
And I really hope that will be like the club and the ownership will be transparent with this process so we can raise our voices when need be.
Michelle Gomez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Meanwhile, Vancouver's new professional women's soccer club has signed its first player, and she's a local. Canadian defender Shannon Weller is joining Vancouver Rise FC.
She made 21 appearances for Canada's women's national team.
I'm super excited to be here. Obviously, I want to thank the Rise for the opportunity, and also, everyone involved in the Northern Super League in building this and creating this opportunity.
Rise FC will compete in the top tier of that Northern Super League alongside Calgary Wild, another of the 6 teams in the new league.
Vancouver Rise is majority owned by Greg Kerfoot. He also co-owns the Vancouver Whitecaps and announced plans, as we said, to sell that club last week. The Northern Super League is set to kick off its inaugural season in April.
And another big step for sports in Vancouver, the first regular season WNBA game to be played outside of America will take place at Rogers Arena, the game on August 15th.
The Seattle Storm will face the Atlanta Dream. The Toronto Tempo will join the WNBA in 2026, the first team located outside of the U.S. And thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC.
And we'll have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National. Good night.